Hello, hello. We are going live, but this looks funny. There we go. Okay. Hi. So today we're going to talk about postpartum. I am currently 7 months postpartum, and it is my third experience being postpartum. Commonly, you might hear, once you're postpartum, you're always postpartum. And that is so true because your body knows when you had a baby, right? Your cervix is forever changed. Your There's a lot of things that are forever changed that aren't necessarily visible to the naked eye, although sometimes they might be. Like if you, um, have a diastasis, a lot of people are self-conscious about that because it like always shows that they've had a baby. And so there's a lot of things that you can do to start to heal that diastasis. But we're going to talk generally about what to do after you've had a baby in the whole realm of postpartum healing today. So if you don't know, I wrote a book. It's called Restore Your Body After Kids: The Secret to Avoid Peeing Your Pants and Achy Joints as You Age. And the reason I wrote this book is because that is exactly what we see, right? So you might feel good for the first couple of years. You might not feel good for the first couple of years. And so you might have acute injuries from birth, meaning that they're injuries that happened during the birthing process that didn't really heal on their own. And therefore, you haven't been able to have sex. You've been peeing your pants ever since, or you've been pooping yourself ever since, or farting uncontrollably ever since, or queefing ever since. These are some examples of what a pelvic floor dysfunction can look like and some of the symptoms that you can have after having kids. So if you have those symptoms right away, it's almost a blessing, even though you're like, how is pooping yourself a blessing? But truly, what happens is you go and get pelvic floor PT right away, and that can help heal those issues. And then also, when you're healing those issues, you can start to rebuild your core, and that rebuild is preventative for creating, you know, protecting yourself really against things that happen later down the line. So it's not ideal, of course. We don't want to be pooping ourselves or peeing our pants postpartum. But if you are initially, then that is a great sign to get your core back right away and start healing your pelvic floor right away. However, if you feel really good postpartum, which a lot of people end up saying they do, they feel great postpartum, and they go 8 months, 9 months, 10 months, and then, start getting their activity back to normal or getting back into a routine where they feel like they can go to the gym or do whatever they want. And that's when they start to notice the issues. Some people might not notice the issues for 5 to 10 years down the line, and they develop incontinence or pelvic organ prolapse a lot later, or at least they don't notice it right away. They notice it a lot later. And so, um, getting that recovery, you can start anytime. Doing it earlier is going to be quicker, right? And then, progressing until 5, 10 years, 20 years down the line, and then starting to heal your pelvic floor and your body. But this is why I'm advocating for every single person should get pelvic floor therapy postpartum. So there's a couple reasons for that. So depending on whether the baby came out of your vagina or came out of your belly, you're going to have different scar tissue. But no matter what, you were probably pregnant for anywhere between 7 and 10 months, okay? During that 7 and 10 months, your body changes drastically. Your core stretches out, your pressure system changes, your organs get squished and pushed out to the side, and they change position in your body. And all of this stuff is happening, and it needs to be healed, right? So it doesn't just heal overnight. Going to the gym isn't going to just fix this. This is something that, with the right therapy, can really truly help you rebuild your core so it can be a powerhouse and can be so protective from, achy joints and peeing your pants as you get older. It's really common in the late 30s and mid 40s to seek out a bladder surgery, right? So getting a sling, oftentimes it's with mesh, to help support the pelvic organs and improve continence. Well, they don't always work, and a lot of times they last about 10 years if they do work. So it's not necessarily like and the reason for that is because what is causing those issues to be worse isn't being dealt with. So a lot of times that's the pressure management, or even just simply the scar tissue in the muscles. So the muscles just aren't working as effectively. So I am going to write in the subtitle of this live. I'll frame this all out, but there's 6 steps essentially to healing your body after kids. And so it's not just like, hey, you get clearance at 6 weeks to 8 weeks from your doctor, you stop bleeding, you're ready to go hit the gym or hit the pavement and, try to get your body back, if that's what you want to call it, which is so, I think we're over that trend, but then like we're so not. And of course, when you're postpartum in that 6 to 8 weeks, you do just want to feel normal again. You do just want your energy back. You do just want to feel like you can fit into your jeans again and not be stuck in maternity clothes. And so that those desires are super real, and that's okay to have them. But there's a lot that we can do to help you so you can safely do that stuff. And if that's your desire is to get back into your jeans, then okay, let's safely do that. Because if you just go back to your boot camp or your fitness studio or whatever it is for you, you could be doing more damage to yourself than actually good for yourself. And so yeah, you might get into your skinny jeans a lot quicker, but you're not gonna, you might have a prolapse in those skinny jeans. So it's like, what do you want? Do you want the prolapse or do you want the jeans? So let's talk about healing the core. So 6 steps to healing the core. And I'm going to bust it out. Like I said, I'll type this all out in the notes section so you can really see and visually like know exactly what needs to happen. But so this is, if you have this book, it starts on page 146. So this is my book here, Restore Your Body After Kids. So number one is identifying the tissues that need to be treated. So when we identify the tissues that have scar tissue, or we identify alignment issues or joint issues or muscle adhesions, we need to know that they are there. So let's say you had a C-section, you have a scar in the belly. Well, that scar goes through a lot of layers of tissue, and it's not just muscles, it's skin, it's fascia, it's organ. And so we need that scar tissue to be released on all those levels. But first, you have to identify that scar tissue. So a pelvic expert PT can do this for you and should take you through these steps of healing, because if you just skip to doing the exercises, you're going to always have that scar tissue, and those muscles are never going to just turn back on for you as quickly and as well as they used to work for you. So you have to treat the scar tissue. The other part of step 1 is identifying alignment issues and posture issues. And if your pelvis is torqued or not back, after your pelvis expands during the birth, which can be up to 30% expansion, that can stay stuck there. Okay. And if that's stuck there, or if you're rotated one way or another, or you have some twists in your pelvis, that can be there for a long time. And so you want someone to help you with that alignment so the muscles can fire really, really well during your healing process. Because if you are not in alignment, it's really hard for the muscles to fire in the way that they should. And so it's going to be really hard when we get to step 3 and we talk about coordinating these muscles to work for your body. So that's step number 1. You also, in step number 1, I'll write it all out, but again, you want to identify pelvic organ prolapse, joint injury, if there was muscle injury, ligament injury. That's all in step number 1. Now, step number 2 is really going to be about healing those structures. So how do we heal those structures? Well, if we're talking organs, we're going to do some visceral mobilization. We're going to help those organs come back to the places that they were. The liver, which if you're looking at me, it might be reversed, but my liver is on this right side here, and your liver gets shoved up to the side and kind of pushed backwards when you're pregnant. And so it's helping these organs come back to normal and then move inside your body. Constipation is really common postpartum, and a lot of that has to do with your organs not ebbing and flowing the way that they should. And so it's really good to start to train those organs to move and shift. And so we can do that through visceral mobilization. Other things that we can do is actually treat the scar tissue. So we can do scar mobilization. We can do joint mobilization. We can break up any muscle adhesions or adhesions at all. Myofascial release. These are some trendy names for pretty much just getting the tissue to move back to normal. So most tissue in our body is contracted, or we have contractile tissue in our body where tissues expand and contract. and we want them to do that. But if there's a big scar in the middle, it gets stuck and they can't always contract and expand. So those are really important things to keep a note of and be aware of. Okay, so that's step number 2. We want to heal all that stuff. Now, when we talk about step number 3, this is when we start to talk about retraining the body. So now I'm not talking about doing Kegels, and I'm not talking about just going and busting out some planks, okay? We're talking about retraining the actual core system. So the core system, I wish I had my soda pop can, but let's pretend my water bottle is the core. Now the top is going to be the diaphragm. Okay, so when you take a deep breath, you use your diaphragm. The bottom is going to be your pelvic floor. The front is your abdominal muscles. The back is your back muscles and your glutes. And then there's a good, nice pressure in this. Well, if these muscles aren't strong, or if you were pregnant, they get stretched out and they need help to return back to normal. And when they return back to normal, you'll start to develop your normal pressure system. It's really important that this pressure system is working for you and coordinated well, because every time your foot hits the ground, it's going to absorb forces that is absorbed through the actual core. Now, if this pressure system is not working well for you, and either the pressure is really high or you don't have good pressure, then you're going to have weakness in your core. If the pressure is really high, it could be when you go to poop, or if you have constipation, things are going to get pushed out more. Could cause things like postpartum hemorrhoids, or can actually cause a pelvic organ prolapse postpartum, even if you didn't have one after pregnancy. So during your birthing process, if you don't have any tension at all, so there's not a ton of pressure in the system, and we can't make them, then our abdominals might feel more floppy and just don't provide a good tension. This can set us up for more of a diastasis recti, which is a split of the abdominal muscles. And so we want to have a good pressure. And so restoring your core postpartum is all about having a good pressure. And if we have scar tissue in one of the areas, whether that's in the pelvic floor or on the abdominal wall, then that can limit the amount of pressure that we need to have that good core strength. So when we start to talk about rebuilding, when coordinating these muscles, we want to learn how to get the abs to fire. So a lot of times we talk about this just starting with the transverse abdominis. So that's like firming your belly. But when you do this, you want to try and avoid squeezing your pelvic floor. And so we might start with some isolations. It's really going to depend on what you're trying to get back to postpartum and what you're currently doing. So what you currently are experiencing. So if you are just healthy and trying to just prevent things down the line, then your protocol might be a little different. If you're already experiencing incontinence or painful intercourse or anything like that, your protocol might be a little different. And so we just start with retraining the core. We coordinate the breath patterns. We coordinate the pelvic floor. We coordinate the abdominal muscles. And I said breath patterns, but that's almost like the most important thing, because once you get everything else coordinated in your body and in your core, then it goes real fast. Like the strength comes and it becomes second nature to do these type of breath patterns to help protect your core. And especially as we get older, it is so important to keep those breath patterns and like all of the techniques that you learn after restoring your body after kids. You have to keep that going. You can't just stop doing them, especially when hormones start to leave our bodies. So we, don't have as much estrogen and our progesterone levels change. And that all happens as you go through premenopause and get, prepare to go through menopause. So keeping these techniques that you're using to retrain your core are super important postpartum. Are super important for the rest of your life. So that's step number 3. Okay, step number 4 is building on that. So this is where you really start to add the strength. And if you're just joining us, I'm talking about all the different steps to healing postpartum that are noted in my book, Restore Your Body After Kids. So this is the step number 4. Once you've re-coordinated, you've learned your breath patterns, you've learned how to coordinate your pelvic floor, your glutes, your lats. I didn't even mention lats yet. But once you start to re-coordinate or coordinate all of that, then we can start to build strength on that. And so whether you like to lift heavy weights, whether you like to jump rope, whether you like to swim or you're a triathlete and you want to get back to competing, or maybe you run and you want to get back to running some halves or doing some kind of racing, then we start to build for whatever your strengths are. So like whatever you like to do, right? So it's really going to be specific to you. So that's step number 4 is building on all the coordinated patterns. So once you have the coordination, can we maintain that coordination as you go to lifting, as you go and deadlift? Okay. So it's really important that it's transferable to whatever you want to be doing for your lifelong fitness, because we need fitness and movement and exercise need to be a part of all of our lives. And it's like, if you don't make time for it now or ever, then you're going to have to make time for these joint surgeries and things that come with not doing a ton of movement. And so the step 4 piece is really important. So only doing step 1 through 3, yes, that's absolutely essential. And honestly, that's what most insurance pays for. Okay. And most of the time, actually, insurance doesn't even pay for pelvic floor therapy postpartum, but when they do, they pay for that. And a lot of times you have to have issues. So they don't pay for the prevention part, right? They pay for the, like, if you have incontinence, then you can go get rid of the incontinence. But this step number 4, 5, and 6 that I talk about, they are so key into building on what you teach your body to do. So we get rid of the scar tissue, we address the alignment, and we address all of those things that take an expert eye to really see and to manually maybe tweak for you. To number 3, coordinating and training the body. To number 4, building on all that movement. Okay. So then number 5 is going to be more maintenance. So you can live in number 5. So restoring your body after kids. Get to number 5 and you're golden, right? Number 5 is all about maintenance. So you've developed your good strength patterns. You're in a good routine, whether you go to exercise twice a week or 5 days a week or 7 days a week, whatever it is for you that you like to do that can keep you healthy, mobile, and flexible, right? Keep our hearts healthy. That's all in step number 5. So maintaining your pelvic floor integrity, maintaining your alignment, maintaining all of that in order to keep you healthy as you age. Okay. Number 6 is progress. So when you start to, maybe you want to do a new hobby, maybe you're into windsurfing, or what's another thing that people are into these days? Oh, let's say a lot of people are taking up rowing, right? Indoor rowing is super common. A lot of times it's part of different interval training like Orange Theory. And I see it in CrossFit all the time. So if you need to get back, if you want to like progress yourself into rowing, well, that's going to be intense. That's a new exercise. So you're going to have to get your pelvic floor and get your whole core strong enough to get you able to row. So I have a pelvic organ prolapse. I know a lot of people have pelvic organ prolapses because we treat them so frequently. And rowing is it can be really hard on the pelvic organ prolapse. You have to have good hip flexibility and be able to maintain a neutral spine when you're sitting on the rower. And you have to generate this movement from your legs and then be able to pull back. And so you have to have good abdominal muscles in order to do that without bearing down and pushing more of your bladder out or your rectum out into the vaginal canal. So in order to help decrease the prolapse, we have to be able to be strong enough not to do that. And then our breath patterns have to be strong enough to keep those organs inside of our body. So that's all what number 6 is. So step number 6 is when you decide that you want to progress or pick up a new exercise, whether that's rowing or you're deciding to go run a marathon, you have to have a strong enough core and basis to build onto whatever that specific activity is for you. So body motion, because our moms are, either they're having their babies, preparing for childbirth, which is in and of itself training for something new. So step number 6 for someone who's already had a child could be training for another birth. And so that training would look a whole lot different than someone who's trying to get back to the rower, right? Because if they're training for another birth, we're going to focus more on the opening of the pelvis and making sure the pelvis is flexible enough and the tissue, the pelvic floor, all the layers are able to open enough to have that baby without a lot of damage and to, open. So we're not going to be susceptible to tearing or increasing prolapses or developing prolapses, and also making sure we're preventing the diastasis. So that would be someone that would be a 6 for someone who's having a second baby, step 6. Step 6 for someone who's trying to get back to the rower or run a marathon is going to look a whole lot different. So it's all individual. What we do here is it's almost like taking your car, it is taking your car to a maintenance station, right? Like it's doing a tune up every month or every couple months, especially as you're in this phase of your childbearing years, your hormones are always changing. So if you breastfeed after you have your baby, and then you stop breastfeeding, tack on another 18 months to where you get your normal hormone regulation, right? And get your like normal joint stability back from that normalization of the hormones. And some people don't do that for 10 years because they're busy having kids. I'm a prime example. And so, you might spend 5, 10 years in that phase of this hormone fluctuation. And then once you end that phase of hormone fluctuation and joint stability fluctuation, then you almost end, you might be already in that premenopause stage and maybe that menopause stage. And so all of that hormone flux, we're going to see changes through the pelvic organs. We're going to see changes through the pelvic floor. So it is so important to keep your pelvic organs, keep your pelvic floor, keep your pelvis in alignment, keep the tissue healthy throughout really this whole like mid-age experience. And it's important once you're 65 too, but especially as you're in this like childbearing changing, time. It's just really important. So just, doing, let's say 4 sessions of pelvic floor therapy, yeah, that's really good, but that might not be enough to keep you in a really good position as you progress into different phases of your life, whether that's, hitting the rower, getting back to a gym routine, or whatever that may be for you. So I hope that makes sense. 6 phases to postpartum healing that I discussed today. As we jump into talking a little bit more about postpartum, I am going to talk more about specifics that you can do to start retraining and rebuilding your core. It's not going to be suitable for everybody, but it will be a good starting place. And especially if you're already doing pelvic floor therapy or you're working with a pelvic expert PT, these are things that you're going to want to do and incorporate and make sure that your programming and your treatment plan incorporates some of the stuff that we're going to talk about. So we'll save that for another day. I hope you guys learned what the 6 stages of postpartum healing are, and I'm excited for your journey in this postpartum body of yours, and of course through the lifespan through menopause. All right, take care, guys.